Welcome to the Self Storage Insight Podcast. I'm Ben Shirey, and today I'm going to be joined by Matt Markham, and we are going to discuss the click to agree versus DocuSign side of online rentals, as well as the information that you should be asking for on your lease agreement. And again, it's going to vary a lot, but we hope that you enjoy this episode and that it provides some value to you and how you operate your business. So today we're going to talk about something a little bit different than what we normally talk about. And we're going to talk about the differences between DocuSign and getting an agreement signed online when a tenant moves in versus a click to agree or a click option to agree to terms of the lease. And so this is something that comes up a lot when we're talking to different business owners. A lot of people don't understand the differences between those two things. And so it's something that you kind of brought up yesterday as we were talking about some questions that come up a lot. So some things that we could address. So as far as what your take on it, what do you normally hear, or how do people kind of ask what the best way is?
Well, typically they just assume that a DocuSign is the only route. The click to sign is kind of new, especially in this industry. But I mean, people they like the idea of it. They're unfamiliar with it, but I explain it to them how it works, how it does pull their information into it. It's reformatted to allow them to easily click to sign versus going through the whole DocuSign process.
Right. Yeah. And so kind of jumping into the legality side, or, I do want to always clearly state we're not lawyers. We're not legal advisors.
Not at all.
I don't claim to be. I don't want to be, right? Like that side of the business. I mean, that's for the lawyers. But at the same time, we do understand a lot of the things that happen in the background because we're in software and we work on this kind of stuff a lot. So I'll kind of just go back through kind of, the history of DocuSign. At the beginning, DocuSign was much more legally binding because click to agree wasn't doing a lot of the things that need to be done to make it binding, right? So initially, click to agree was used by software companies specifically, and there was no audit trail. And so the biggest thing between DocuSign and click to agree was this audit trail or identity verification that happens through that process. And so to kind of keep it dumbed down in simple terms, when somebody was clicking to agree, all that was happening was there was a date and timestamp done, and there was no verification of the person that did that action or took that action, right? Whereas with DocuSign, they were typing out their name. But what makes DocuSign actually more binding is when they do the two-step verification process with DocuSign. But a lot of companies have gotten away from that anyway. And so that really never happens. And so the two-step verification process is that you would go to a website, you would fill out all of the information, and then with that information, they would email you the DocuSign link, and then you're verifying that it's you, that you have access to that email address. You're clicking on the email, opening DocuSign, and then you're putting in your information, which creates an audit trail of the user that signed in to sign the DocuSign. It stamps the IP address, and so some other things happen there. However, a DocuSign that is just embedded as part of a sign-up process is not any more legally binding in terms of it is not doing the two-step verification process, right? And so that's where DocuSign was really more valuable in terms of identity verification. And click to agree has just come so far, right? Yeah. And it's so simple, and everybody understands it, and we all use it all the time without really thinking about it. Like every time your software on your phone does an update, we're clicking to agree. But what's different now about click to sign, and where it's really come onto the scene a lot stronger and a lot more legally binding, is that now it is also, we're performing audit trails with that click to sign, right? So when somebody clicks to agree to terms on a lease through CC Storage, for example, which is what we've been building out, they are actually clicking to agree. We are taking their email address that they use to sign up for their unit online. We are taking the IP address of the device that they're on, proving that it belongs to them if it would ever come to a court hearing or something where you would need to legally have something be a binding document, as well as stamping the time and the date and everything that goes along with that. And so it's really come a long way. And what a lot of companies are doing now is with the DocuSign, they're just embedding that right there anyway as part of the process, which completely takes away the two-step verification, the identity, that would be the main difference. So if you're still really concerned about the legal side of DocuSign and you really want to make sure you're doing it right, you need to make sure that it's emailing them the document so that way there is that two-step verification process. But again, a lot of operators in self-storage that we deal with are coming from real estate and residential properties, right? And so the legal side behind residential versus self-storage is completely different.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of operators come into this industry thinking like, I need to do things the same way as I did with my residential properties.
Including 1-year leases and stuff like that.
1-year leases, security deposits.
Yep.
So these are things that we see that transition over from owners that are buying facilities that don't really know all these things yet.
Yeah.
You know, we don't run into a lot of operators, and I've talked to tons of operators in the last year that have not had any issues with their lease holding up. They've never had to go to a court case or small claims or anything to try to present their lease as a legally binding document. And so it just happens, again, with most operators on a very small scale. I would probably make the recommendation, like, know your market, right? Bigger markets where you have higher rate of delinquencies or, you know, more things like that are going to probably they'll probably want to handle it a little different than a tertial market like the area that we're in, where it just
a little more thorough.
It doesn't come up a whole lot. But yeah, on the legal side behind it, click to agree is becoming it's becoming used so much more because it's so much more user friendly for the experience. You don't lose customers by the email verification being sent and they can't find the email, and we've lost a lot of business in the last years through that DocuSign process, where if you're actually going to do it the right way and send the email for verification, that the person that needs to sign it can't find it.
Yeah.
Right. And so you almost can't use that option, right? Or you're going to lose online business. Yeah. And that's just the unfortunate reality that we live in, is that, you know, it gets caught up in spam filters. It ends up in the trash and people can't find it. So it's not really a viable option anymore.
Even the DocuSign with 2-step or without the 2-step is still there's still a lot more of a process than the click to sign.
Right.
Click to sign's what it states. It's a click to sign.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, on the legal side of it, there's just not very much difference anymore.
No.
The DocuSign makes a pretty font when you type your name in.
It creates your signature.
But yeah. I mean, I've signed multiple in the last year with different companies that we do business with, and my signature's already there. And it's like, hey, do you want to use this one? And I say, yes. Well, that click is the exact same as the click to agree. But again, there are always some people that are going to kind of hold out. The industry is changing so much. And so technology continues to evolve.
Yeah.
And things change. And so, you know, DocuSign, while it is still really prevalent, there's a lot of industries that still really use it. Banks still aren't super comfortable with the whole click to sign thing, but they are changing as well. And so I think over the next couple of years, DocuSign is going to be pretty much obsolete in most industries. And I think in storage, it's already moving in that direction so fast but yeah, we still hear about it all the time.
Yeah. Yep, it hasn't really been an objection at all. People like the idea when you remind them that when there's a lengthy process for tenants to rent. Mind you, they're in a hurry. In most cases, they're shopping online.
Sure.
When they have to go through multiple stages of a process to rent and click through different pages, or even that additional DocuSign, they lose interest, and statistically, you're going to lose business because of that process.
For sure.
So the shorter you can make that process, the more likely these tenants are to rent.
Yeah, absolutely. And the online side of rentals is becoming more and more of the business every year. Like, it's not going away.
No.
Right? If you're not competing online, if you don't have a smooth online process, and we've talked about this multiple times, if you don't have a smooth online rental process, you're not going to be in the business for very long, because you have to have that option now. It's a must in almost every market.
Yeah.
You know, there are some old facilities that are not being operated that way.
They don't have much competition around them.
Right, yeah. Or they don't ever raise rates and push anybody out, and so they just stay at 100% occupancy. And we see those people. But at the same time, you know, that's not really the sustainable side of the business that we're talking about anyway. That's more of just somebody that's in the business for a little bit of passive income, and they own this building, right? So they're not ones that are operating it. So I wouldn't really think that those people are even probably listening to the podcast.
Probably not. No.
Right. So it is interesting also to note, you know, we see so many variations between the online rental process in terms of the information that's requested. And so we'll just kind of dive into that as the next part of the podcast. But I want to take a little bit of a break here. We're actually going to go and do a little bit of a different segment on the podcast now. So I'm going to try and bring Matt in once a week onto the podcast, and we're going to talk about something that we've heard in a conversation with an operator in the past week, and just something that was brought up to us in terms of a way that somebody operates their business or something that they did that was creative. And then we're just going to share that. And so it's not necessarily us recommending this is what you do for your business. It's just going to be something interesting that we heard that people might get some either a laugh out of it
or something,
or something that's usable. And so, Matt, in the last week with all your conversations and stuff with facility owners, was there anything that stood out to you that you thought would be kind of an interesting piece of information or something for the
So with new facilities especially, the question always gets asked, do you have a lease template or something that we can use as a lease agreement? And we don't provide that. For legal reasons, we don't want to be behind that. So they ask where they can get a copy, and we say you can pay a significant amount of money to have a lawyer draft one up. You can search, Google, ChatGPT. There's a lot of options. One lady shared with me that, and it's a pretty large facility, and she shared with me that what she did was she got online, rented from a competitor, and paid $50 for the unit and got a copy of that lease agreement, and she used that lease agreement, and she obviously tailored it to her business's needs there. But yeah, she used the competitor's lease agreement. Cost her $50, didn't have to pay a lawyer $500 to do it, and super effective, and she still uses it to this day. So
yeah, that's funny. I would say maybe they're my main concern. Well, I mean, again, that's not a recommendation from our business. No. It's just people are pretty creative in self-storage, and I mean, we run into some crazy stories in terms of people gathering and whatever they're trying to do for their business. But it is a unique way of trying to get a lease, and that's a little bit of a different one. I would be mainly concerned there with, like, all of a sudden I rent from a storage facility and they have a 14-page lease document that's absolutely crazy. And I'm like, oh crap, I just paid $50 for this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that could happen really quickly too. And I mean, on the side of the leases within self-storage, there is so much variation, right? So a lot of people ask us what we think should be included in the lease agreement, or if we can send them a template or a copy of somebody else's just so they can look at it. Because a lot of people are buying facilities and they really don't have any background in rentals or real estate properties, anything like that. So, they usually ask us if we can send that. And again, we always try not to share any information like that. We're not legal advisors. Again, never want to be.
No.
But at the same time, every lease that we see that we put into our software for a business so they can do online rentals is so different. Like, I've never been in an industry where there's not like any standard whatsoever for this. We work with facilities that are 1,000 units, and they'll send us a 20-line lease agreement. I mean, that is just the most basic thing. And they say, oh,
that's worked for 20 years.
Yeah, and they've never had any issues with it. And again, depending on your market.
Yeah.
And then we've worked with 20-unit facilities that have 14 pages, and they're asking for everything on the lease that you can possibly ask for a person.
So security number.
Right, date of birth. I mean, credit score, everything is coming. I mean, they're making it as hard as possible for these people to rent.
Yeah.
But and that really comes back to, how do you want to operate your business, right? If you're really trying to be very strict with the people that you allow into your facility, then maybe that works for you.
Yeah.
And you're not going to lease up very fast. It's going to take you a really long time to get people. And maybe when you get them, they're just absolutely solid renters. I would never do it that way. That would not be my preference ever. But at the same time, there are people that do it. And then there are people that ask for a name, a phone number, and a card to put on file,
or even a nickname,
and that's it. And so it varies so much that there's really no standard in the industry for what should be on these lease agreements. It really just depends on what you want with your business. So we see people all the time that take a lease and they'll just cut a bunch of lines out of. We've had companies send us a lease to put in the system, and it's had a different company's name on it, and we reach back and we're like, hey, do you want to use this company's name? Because they stole it from somebody else. So you see that kind of stuff a lot in storage. The main concern with us as a business, and the way that we try to always present that to businesses as well, is your online process should be easy. You should be asking for the minimum amount of information that you're comfortable with to do these online rentals, right? So I don't want to go in and tell somebody, oh, don't ask for anything, and then all of a sudden they end up in a bad spot, and it was my recommendation. But you should be trying to get people in the door as easy as possible.
There's 4 or 5 core things that you can ask for, along with a picture of an ID or license, which
which covers a lot of things.
Which does, Plus, it's an extra verification, or part of the verification process. But I mean, within a minute, you can provide those 4 or 5 core things, sign a lease agreement, be assigned a unit, pay, you have a new renter. Right. It's as simple as that. If you make that a lengthy process, like I said, you're going to lose some business.
Absolutely. And I mean, we see drop off with our online rental process is the easiest one that we've seen from all the softwares that we've looked at.
Yeah.
We have a one page, you know, if you don't ask for any additional information, there's about 8 fields to fill out. And then you make your payment, you click to agree to the lease terms. We track all that stuff. And we've had zero issues with that process.
And that still gives them the option to opt into tenant protection if they choose. Like that's still part of that process.
Correct.
And still within a minute or so they can rent.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then, I mean, and we still see some drop off there, you know, as far as people that click on or they'll add their information. So the biggest thing there to realize is like, the more fields that you ask for, you're reducing the amount of people that are going to rent online from you with every field that you add. So aside from like contact information and adding a card where they know they're going to have to do that to pay online, every field that you put in there, the actual number that we saw from a marketing perspective of like form submissions online is that for every additional field that you request, you're going to get an additional 5% drop off on that submission. And so if all of a sudden you find yourself asking for 10 additional things that they have to go through, especially if it's things like uploading additional documents, those see a significantly higher drop off than a simple field like an emergency contact or something like that. But the barrier to entry gets harder. You see less people moving in, and that's just what it is, you know?
Yep.
So our recommendation is always just ask for the information that you're comfortable with. And then, you know, in some cases, they do have to meet up with somebody to ask for something additionally if there was something they didn't like on the submission or whatever. Yeah. But give them the ability to rent from you online really easy. And then, again, it varies so much in self-storage. Yeah. It's really up to the operator of what they're comfortable with.
It's a very unique industry.
For sure. So, yeah, I mean, and as far as that goes too, the industry is changing really quickly. There's more technology coming into the space. Operators are going to have to make adjustments because if I'm not comfortable with something as an operator right now, but my competitors all adapt to it, right? You know, and we'll cover some of these in different podcasts, but things like AI, as it moves into the industry, AI support, you can do a lot of different things now. And if I don't adapt and everybody else around me does, I go out of business, you know? So it's not really, I only get to do the things that I want to do and I might still survive. Like you probably won't survive in this industry if you don't start to adapt to some of the or the technology that's coming.
Might survive for a few years, but I mean, long-term play.
Yeah, and is survival what anybody's really trying to do, right? Yeah. We're here to make money, and we're here to run businesses.
It's supposed to be the nest egg of the retirement. You know, you want to see it grow, not struggle to keep it alive. But
for sure, yeah, awesome. Well, cool. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, enjoyed the conversation, and
looking forward to many more.
Yeah, and then we'll start doing some more fun stuff on the podcast as well. So
absolutely
awesome. Thanks for your time today, Matt, and thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Self Storage Insight Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Just a quick reminder, this episode was brought to you by CC Storage. CC Storage is a no-cost property management software that allows you to pass the fees for credit card processing on to your tenants, freeing up some CapEx space for your business and helping you more efficiently run your storage facility. If you'd like to learn more about CC Storage, click the link in the description below, and we hope to see you again for our next episode.